we somehow lose sight along the way of celebrating what our body can do versus being consumed with how our body looks.
So I've never felt comfortable in my own skin. And I hate even that I say that.
I don't think the wounds ever fully heal. They will scar over, but they will always be there and they will always be a part of us.
Thank your body for being able to walk out the front door, to be able to hop in the shower, to be able to pick up your kid, to be able to drive a car, whatever that looks like, but be grateful.
Welcome to the Living Richly podcast. We are super excited to be launching the first topic in a series that Kate and I are doing on shattering the status quo. Real women, real talk. And our first topic today is one that hits home with many women. We receive a lot of messages on this, and that is body dysmorphia and self-love. And this is really all about a raw and real, candid conversation about body image, but more importantly, the pursuit of self-love, especially as we get older. So we wanted to dive into our thoughts, the stigmas, the barriers that keep a lot of women hidden, keep a lot of women in fear, hold a lot of women back out of fear of judgment, shame, what other people are thinking. And we really want to help break down those barriers and kind of just chat through that together and embrace that vulnerability as our strength.
Yeah. Excited for this one. I think too, we were just chatting. It's a heavy one. It's a heavy one. It's a heavy one for women, this subject. So I'm happy to be here with you and that we're having this conversation. I think it's important.
And I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of people see us as the figures of people that have it all figured out. And, you know, we have this wonderful podcast and we talk like we know things. But to Kate's point, in all honesty, like right before we started filming, we were like, holy shit, this is hard. This is an emotional topic for us. So let's just dive right into it. Wanting to feel comfortable in our own skin doesn't necessarily and shouldn't feel or mean like we want to be skinny or muscular or have a certain image in terms of what we want to be. One size doesn't fit all.
Absolutely.
But if we take it back to our childhood,
already I'm in
self-love. When did you realize that you didn't feel comfortable in your own skin, and how did that show up for you?
So I've never felt comfortable in my own skin. And I hate even that I say that and I hear myself. I don't remember a time I ever felt comfortable in my own skin. I would say maybe until the last like 2 or 3 years. And those are pockets of time too. It's not all the time. I don't live in that space. I remember young, I was an outcast. I didn't fit in school. I was bullied a lot. I had buck teeth, short hair. My mom would make me wear my brother's hand-me-downs. Like, I just felt so out of place. And I was reminded constantly that I was out of place. And for me, it got, in high school, not much different. I mean, I found my friends and we figured stuff out, but like never really found my place, had a lot of yucky moments with teenage boys calling me all kinds of horrible things. And I never felt comfortable in my skin. I never felt like my body, let alone we won't even talk about the mental space, but physically, I never felt that who I was or my body type was okay. I mean, high school was like Kate Moss days where everyone was like waif thin and I have hips and I never fit that model. I never fit that sort of, what does that perfection look like? And I think it was maybe university I started to get a little more comfortable in my skin, maybe.
Yeah.
But it's
a journey.
It's a journey and I'm still on that journey. What about for you?
Yeah. I love that transparency just around that word journey, because I think a lot of women feel like they need to fix themselves and it needs to be fixed, but the fixing never stops because it is a journey and we continue to evolve in that. I was very awkward as a teenager as well, all the way from trying to fit in, as I think, most kids.
Yeah.
To my haircuts. I remember I had really short hair. I wanted to get my hair spiked. And, the teasing and the bullying. I wore glasses from the time I was 4 years old.
Yeah.
So back then, all the comments around it. And to compensate for that, because even as adults, we tend to compensate for things that we don't feel great about to move into things that we think will make us feel great. So I started smoking to hang out with the cool kids. I lost my virginity at a really young age.
Yeah.
I said yes to things that would make people like me. To your point, as I started moving into college, I started to kind of find my way a little bit, but I always found like I would take a couple steps forward and then kind of fall back down, or somebody would bring me down. And I never really truly learned, and I'm still on that journey.
Yeah.
Yay, therapy. On how to navigate that. And so so we've talked about teenagers and now kind of where we are in our adult life, both of us in our 40s. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about how our relationship with our bodies have shifted from 20s into our 30s, into our 40s, coulds, shoulds, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think what I learned young is what I learned, right or wrong, is that my body had an effect on other people. And I don't mean that in a sexual way. I mean, how I look seemed to bother other people, or it affected other people. So what I learned was, I better make this all perfect to not bother these other people, or to not get a negative, some sort of comment. And so that shell was firm by the time I was in my 20s. My 20s was thin. I need to be thin, because thin and beautiful equals this should. I've got all my shit together. It was the Kate Moss skinny. It was me unhealthy relationship with food. I don't know many women that haven't gone through some bout of that, but, watching every calorie I ate, ensuring I exercised 5 days a week. I knew
measuring everything.
I knew it all, right? And so my goal in my 20s was to look on the outside. Yeah. I would say, into my 40s, I've evolved to, how do I feel? Do I feel good? Am I feeling healthy and strong? 30s was kids. So 30s was the pressure of having 3 kids, and you get applauded for losing the baby weight, right? Yep. I remember so many times people would come over, oh, you look great. And I'd be like, oh, yeah, thanks. I got all my shit together. I don't got fuck all together. Yep. I'm like drowning. I'm feeling the pressure of everyone's like, oh, she's hanging on to that weight a bit too long, or getting applauded if I lose it fast, right? We don't talk about what happens to women's bodies after they have children.
Stepping on that fucking scale at your doctors. Let's weigh you. No.
Let's not. And how about every woman's body as they're pregnant changes differently, and how we, like, I sometimes forget I produced three children out of this body, like, love on this body. But in my 30s, it was like, no, I got to prove all of it, right? And then 40s for me have been an interesting journey. Like, when I divorced at 40, I was the strongest, fittest I have ever been, mostly because I was avoiding home and spending a lot of time at the gym, like late into the evening. And that felt really awesome, like, to feel strong and fit. That's really what I go to now. But there's also, don't get me wrong, I want to look good in a bikini. I want to feel good in the pants I'm wearing. And then we can talk about this, but COVID for me was like a big, like, wake up call of, like, sort of, I gained, 15 pounds. I don't know. I don't get on the scale anymore, but I gained a certain amount of weight. A lot of people did. We're sitting around, we're not moving. Yep. But that forced me that time, not only to get present mentally, but it forced me to spend time with my own body, right? In a way I had never done before. And I had no outside pressure to look a certain way, to do my hair, that I wasn't comparing myself to others. I wasn't, like, there was none of that, because we were home. And it's amazing what happens when you let go and you give yourself freedom. And so now on the other side of that, in a different place, it's for me, it's health. I want to live till I'm 90. Like, that's my goal right now. So that's my kind of 20, 30, 40.
I love that. I love that you mentioned the pregnancy thing, because there's such and of course we didn't have social media when we were growing up.
No.
Not that we're that
What do you mean? Wendy? I am still 30.
But not imagining, living the pressures of we both have teenagers.
Yeah.
We're both divorced. We both have children who have gone through similar struggles, and to think about navigating everything we have and tying it back to find the teenage, the very awkward teenage years for a lot of people, but then, the pregnancy piece. And I think that we somehow lose sight along the way of celebrating what our body can do versus being consumed with how our body looks. Even to the point of the celebration of, yay, I had a natural birth versus, well, I had to have an epidural or I had to have a C-section or whatever, right? Instead of celebrating, this is how my body is reacting and going through this.
Yeah.
But this is the outcome, healthy children, whatever the case may be. But I find we put so much pressure on, and women have a way of cutting each other up, not necessarily with words all the time, but also with just looks and just the overall vibe. And so as we evolve, I know I'm kind of going off topic here, but as we've kind of evolved into our 40s, learning to embrace who our tribe is and who makes us feel good on the inside, but also on the outside as well, and really being selective about who's in our circle.
Yeah. And I think the outside often follows the inside work, right? So, having done a lot of work the last, 8 years, I see that evolution of self-love and self-worth. And when you stop feeling like you need to be someone you're not, it takes off a lot of that pressure, right?
It's so freeing, but it's such a work. Like it's so, I don't want to say it's hard work. It's not hard. It's tedious. And it has to be consistent work.
And it does. And I think too, what's important, and I know we're going to talk about this, and we were joking about this earlier, but like we've changed sets, and so we're trying stuff out, and there's new angles, and like the real talk, real women. This is what this is like you and I are still I'm not concerned with how I look like that. I don't feel like that's ever going to be a thing, right? Yep. Yes, I want to feel confident. Yes, I want to feel, do I want an angle that makes me maybe look 6 times what I don't? And that's honest. However, it doesn't define me the same way it used to. Like that might have paralyzed me 15 years ago where I'd be like, no, I can't do this shot.
Yep.
Right. Yep. So that's the evolution. I think like, I just don't want people to think like, oh my God, I'm now 48. I've evolved. I don't have shit figured out, but I'm more over here on that journey. Like I feel in a better spot about it. There's many times I wake up and like, I don't like what I see. Like I think that's human.
Yep. That's human. But I love that you've spent and you've talked about it on so many of the episodes that we've done around going through that journey and evolving. And you talk about it a lot in your get to mindset around things that you get to versus have to. Exactly. And that ties a lot into, who we are as women. Yep. I know for me being a work in progress, learning to love and appreciate my body, yes, through the pregnancy, through my first child, and then to hating my mind and body with my second child. Mm-hmm. It was completely different. And for any woman out there who has birthed more than one child, sometimes those pregnancies are completely different physically, mentally, emotionally. Instead of postpartum depression, I had prepartum depression. It was fucking awful. And I didn't know what was wrong with me. And back then, I mean, it wasn't that long ago. It was only almost 17 years ago, but it still wasn't talked about enough as it is today. Yeah. And then along the way, of course, backtracking to just before the pregnancy, coming out of my teenage years, developing extremely poor eating habits, becoming obese. I've talked about this in my story as well, to then taking and learning how to take control over my mind, my body in 2014. Now I'm in my 40s, and so still kind of evolving. And, yes, we laughed about it before we started recording. Like, what's the angle? And, so again, catching ourselves sometimes with the verbiage that we talk to ourselves about, because our mind listens to everything we tell it. Totally. And learning how to age gracefully now is kind of where I'm at right now, and embrace healthy aging.
I love that.
Even with fucked up knees.
Yeah, right. Oh my God.
And my back.
I bent down to pick something up and you get out and you're like, oh, what is
Everything
this?
cracks when I get out of bed.
Everything hurts a bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah. For sure.
But then as we kind of talk about and move into the whole body dysmorphia thing, I hear that so much. And me being in the wellness space and in the gym space, I hear it a lot. We're moms with teens who have had eating disorders and going down the path on how it's impacted us, our thoughts, decisions, questioning our own motives on certain things. And it doesn't. So, and for anybody listening that maybe isn't going through an eating disorder, it could be anything related to anything you're struggling with as a parent or as a mom.
Yeah.
It just so happens that both of our children have gone through that.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about that. So how has the journey of watching your own child suffer, how has that affected you?
Oh my God. It's like the hardest thing I have ever been through. And it's forced me to look at my relationship with food. And, you know, I always praised myself, honestly, like I worked so hard to make sure in our household that we talked about health. We didn't talk about food, like bad food, good food. We didn't talk about you're going to gain weight, you need to be skinny. It was always like healthy, you want fuel. Like it was always about being strong. And I remember talking to my ex-husband, I'm like, it's really important with our daughter that you instill this in her specifically. So I have 2 boys, as you know, but for our listeners, I have 2 boys and a girl. And so I was so worried about her, right? Like my whole, as a parent, I'm like, you hear about eating disorders with girls. And so I thought I nailed that. Like I was so sure I nailed it, like probably overly confident in that space. And then sure enough, not my daughter, but one of my sons was diagnosed with an eating disorder, a severe eating disorder. And it all happened very quickly in COVID. We know the number of eating disorders were through the roof in adolescence, right? There wasn't enough care. I saw it happening. It happens fast. It's a boy, so there's not a lot of resources. They actually don't know enough. There's not enough research on eating disorders for boys. It shows up differently. I learned a ton. There's like muscle dysmorphia. There's all kinds of different eating disorders for boys. Long story short, we were propelled into learning a lot. And he was admitted into CHEO. We were unexpectedly. We took him in for an intake. They warn you, if your child is medically not well, we will admit them and you lose your rights at that point, right? So they have to legally admit. And I remember being like, oh, he's fine. We all thought he was like, we knew he was sick and he needed help. And we were trying to just get him to CHEO to get him a psychologist because I couldn't even get that for him. That's how bad it was in the city. And I had spreadsheets. I was calling everywhere.
Yep.
So we were just excited that he was going to get a therapist. And I'll never forget, they run tests all day long, and then only one parent can go because it was COVID. So I went, and then they brought me into this room, and there's 3 specialists. So they have like this whole series of specialists, right? So there's 3 doctors and Zach and me, and we're sitting there, and they just say, and it's horrible, there's a 2-way mirror, like I'm in a fucking prison because they weren't allowed more people in the room because it's COVID. And so I don't know who's behind. And they sit there and they're like, we need to admit Zach. And I'm like, what? And I was so taken back that I was like, what do you, like, no. Like, no. Oh, I gotta get.
To hear that, like to hear those words, to hear those words as a parent, and have your child taken from you already in a state where COVID was not easy for anybody, but then to not know where they're going. Oh, we talked about this before. So no apologies ever, but this kind of ties back to why we're doing this. This is real talk, real women. And I feel like there's so many people who are struggling with the things that we struggle with that need that space to feel open. So I'm going to thank you for sharing everything that you shared because it's fucking hard. It's really fucking hard.
It's really fucking hard. And we don't talk about it. And I think it's important that we talk about it, especially for our boys, because I think that we just don't talk about it enough. I can tell you in that moment, I felt I failed my son. I felt like I let him down. They told me his kidney and liver functions weren't normal. His heart rate was so low, they were worried he was going to have a heart attack. Like, my kid was sick. So he was in the right spot. He was where he needed to be. Right. But when they say that, I'm like, meanwhile, I've actually done everything I possibly could in my power to get him to where he is. But all I hear is them saying, and they use specific words, your kid is malnourished. As a parent, to hear that your kid is malnourished.
Your first thought is, what did I do wrong?
What did I do wrong?
I thought I did everything right.
He's a minor. It's my job to protect him, right? And so, he was admitted for a month. He was so sick. He was in a wheelchair. He wasn't allowed. The only walking he was allowed to do was to go to the bathroom because he wasn't allowed to burn calories. So we would go outside and we'd have to have him in a wheelchair. My ex and I would take nights you're sleeping in one of those chairs, and we would sleep, and we'd take one night on, one night off. And he was on a heart rate monitor every single night, because his heart rate would dip, and it would dip so low that the nurses would come in because they were nervous because they thought his heart was going to stop. So it was traumatic for me.
Absolutely.
So what it forced me to do, though, was to look at, okay, what role did I play a role, first off, right? Like those are the questions as a mom, like right away I go to blame, but it's
absolutely.
Like, what role did I play? Yep. Did I play a role? And I really had to sit with, what I got present to is the stupid saying, but kids do as you do, not as you say. And so while I thought I said all the right things, I had to get really present to my actions, which were not unhealthy, but not eating dinner with them, eating different food, right? I'm not having your mac and cheese. I'm going to have my chicken and rice and broccoli, whatever. So I'm showing them, right? Going to the gym, I'm sure I've made a million comments about, I just feel fat or whatever. Like, so I got really present to, they're going to do what you do and not as you say. And I own my part in that. What I also learned to let go of, though, was it was not my journey and it was his. And I don't know that I could have done anything. And that in the end, he's on a really great path right now, and he's doing really well, and so proud of him. But I still have guilt there, even though rationally I don't know that I could have stopped it, right? And my therapist will tell me you couldn't have. Right. I'm not at that part, right. But
and I see that as those are wounds, and when you go through something like that, I don't think the wounds ever fully heal. They will scar over, but they will always be there, and they will always be a part of us. Yeah. And I think the wounds aren't necessarily our responsibility or our fault, but how we choose to heal from them is 100% our responsibility, as hard as that is. Yeah. And so you saying learning how to get present and focusing on all of the things that you could do now in terms of being able to tie that presence into moving forward still doesn't change anything around what you went through. And I think, I know, because I'm going through the same thing, it will always be there.
And it's, and I'm just going to, a huge shout out to Chio and the team there. They were overrun. The eating disorder floor was full. We were on a regular floor with other kids. There was probably 7 other kids on just a regular floor, sharing rooms with kids who are actually medically ill. In an eating disorder program, you've got parents on calls. Like just a huge shout out.
What a moment in time.
Just, they did everything they could, and they're trying to help as many kids as they possibly can, and the pressure that they were under, and they're going off on stress leave. And so it was this vicious cycle. But honestly, Chio was just so phenomenal during that time. And still his post-care for 2 years after was equally. What about for you? What has come to light for you?
Yeah. So, in terms of kind of watching my child suffer, going through this with my oldest child, and she is still in the middle of this. Now she's over the age where Chio won't take her. And so because she is technically classified as an adult, it's helping her learn how to navigate that, but recognizing that my hands are tied with things that I cannot be involved in because she is of age. COVID was absolute hell on her. And I have a really hard time looking at pictures on my phone from 4 years ago because she's such a different person. And I'm not just talking about the physical part of it. The smile in her eyes and all of those things have just changed so much. Yeah. And as a mom, there's nothing that hurts more than seeing your child is not the same as they used to be. And so as she continues to navigate this journey, and it's interesting because when she turned 18, I'll never forget her saying to me, it was almost like a shock, and not just about the eating disorder, but about just life in general. And she looked at me and she's like, I'm graduating high school and have to go out in this big scary world all alone and be an adult. And I can't remember what her exact words were, but it was it was almost like a revelation of, I don't have the comfort and security of being in high school or now I have to be grown up and I have to kind of navigate this. And I remember saying to her, your dad and I will always be there for you. And even though my ex-husband and I are divorced, he always did such a great job at being there for her and supporting her just as I did, and so I was always just very open with her around your dad and I will always be here to help navigate, and help you. At the end of the day, you're the one that has to make the decisions. But where I'm going right now is finding myself working really hard with my therapist on taking the blame off of myself for what she's struggling with and how I think I should fix her. Because as parents,
such a big one,
it's a huge one.
Yeah.
You think, what could I have done differently? What should I have done? Because like I said, as a mom, you want your child to feel so loved, so protected,
100%.
Happy and successful. And it hurts unlike any hurt when they are struggling and when they are at a place of rock bottom and they just can't seem to get out of it.
You said something that really stuck with me, and I know other parents who have kids with eating disorders. There's a blankness, and it's really hard to explain, but it's like, so my son was like goofy, fun, loud, full of energy, like making everyone else laugh. And then and it was in COVID, and he just retreated, and he was going through his journey, whatever he was going through, but he changed, his personality changed so much. And I think that's something we don't talk a lot about, is the loss that parents feel when their kid shifts like that. And when their kid is like going through something very, very traumatic for them. But we're also grieving the loss of our kid the way we know them. Right. And you're trying to reconcile with this new version of your child and wanting and it's okay to think that all you want is your old child back. It's okay to think that it's okay to miss that and grieve that. For me, that was really hard because not only were we in this state of trauma around like making sure he's physically well, I also felt like I was grieving the loss of
100%
my old son.
It's very, and that's, it's interesting you say that, because I remember saying to my therapist, well, actually, she was the one that said it, like, you are absolutely grieving what used to be and what was. Yeah. And I remember I kept saying, but it's not that I'm not embracing who she is now.
100%.
Wow. And her kind of going through this journey, and I have to give her a shout out because this has been really, really hard for her, trying to navigate the social pressures, being of the adult age where you don't have the cocoon of having support as a child like you would maybe with Chio. And gosh, I wished I tried everything to try to but there was nothing they could do. But thinking about the thoughts that consume my mind, and I know you're going to agree, but that emotional turmoil that constantly goes through your mind, and trying really hard with different activities and exercises to be able to focus on creating that positivity in my mind on what will be in the future and who she is now, but celebrating every single little step, which I do. Yeah. But I think I spent, and I still catch myself spending a lot of time focusing on, I wish I could just fix everything. I wish I could make everything better. I wish I could do everything. I wish I could help her find her way. And I have a tendency to gravitate to the what ifs.
Right.
I think she doesn't get better. What if this? What if that? What if this? Which we all know solves nothing other than just fucking you up in the head where you just, then you can't sleep, then you can't eat, you can't do anything because you're constantly consumed with it.
But it's for like an eating disorder's for life. And so we met some great people along the way and I understand the world of EDs more. I understand what happens. I understand more like I understand where his stems from now. I understand that the eating disorder is a result of something else. Yeah. And it often is.
Yes.
You know, I've learned so much about the need to control an environment and what that's about and why there's a lot of eating disorders in COVID is that need to control, right? It's you can control this one thing. It's a lot more layered than that. I'm not suggesting they're all like that, but I think knowing, like having some tools now around what it is. So when I see, you know, my son sort of digressing, if I see if I get triggered by something, I'm very aware that it's he's going to be okay or he's not. And I'm there to be by his side on that journey. And I can't control where he goes from here. I can help guide him. I can give him all the tools but letting go of wanting the fix, it's hard.
It's hard. And it's
so
something
hard.
That you have to continuously practice. And
absolutely.
The one thing my therapist said to me last year, and she still continues to tell me this almost every time we meet, is she will eventually find her way. And she said, as a mom, this is going to hurt to hear it, but I promise you when she does, it will have nothing to do with you.
Ooh.
And I was just like, whew, but I know she's right because it doesn't have anything to do with us.
Yeah.
Especially when they are at the age where they are not super little kids anymore, where we have that control.
No.
But yeah, everything from that emotional turmoil, strained relationships. I mean, there's certain things that I feel I can't do and I don't want to do with certain people because I just feel like I'm in my own bubble of wanting to be able to help and just be there for her. An unprecedented.
Yeah. That's a hard word.
Sense of responsibility and ownership is something and then of course we talked about the constant worry, but
it's I now see I'm going to take a positive out of it for me, and the gift that I got from it was that I now have, it's not that I would want my son to ever go through that so I can get something out of it. I'm not suggesting that. No. But if one positive thing that came out of that was my relationship now with food, which is like, and I didn't have an overly unhealthy relationship with food. It was just not like, I think it's most women's relationship with just thinking about what you're eating while you're eating it. Like I'm now at this point where I'm like, I'm going to have pizza and wine because I want pizza and wine. And I'm going to go to the gym because I want to gain muscle and get strong. And I want to be healthy and I want to live long. But I'm not doing the sacrificing. I'm not getting on the scale. I'm not doing that anymore. It doesn't mean I don't have days where I wake up and I'm like, or I'm getting ready to go on my trip and I'm texting my girlfriend. I'm like, oh, I tried on my shorts and my shorts fit. It doesn't mean I'm not having those moments. It's just the bigger picture. And I'm super grateful for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love your authenticity and your transparency around that, because I think more women need to speak about that. More women, and I'll speak about it from I work in a gym. Yeah. And people think often that I have it all figured out. Yeah. But there's absolutely days where I feel like I just don't feel good in my skin. Yep. Or I just don't feel like, or my favorite thing, it's not my favorite, I'm being sarcastic, but playing the comparison game. 10 years ago, I used to be able to this, and this. And now I can't do this, and this. Or, so I put that expectation and that pressure on myself. And so I'm learning to, and I celebrate myself for learning over the past 3 years past 3 years is probably the biggest part of my journey, to celebrate what I can do and not what I think I should be doing.
Yay.
Yeah.
I celebrate that.
Yay.
Go Wendy. I do. That's huge. That's huge.
It is huge.
Okay. Do we want to, let's switch gears a bit. And so maybe we can
want to talk about tips?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
We love tips.
Well, we do like tips. Really? But what are some tips we can give people to kind of start maybe on that journey of having, body positivity, whatever, self-love?
Yep.
Some simple things people can maybe start weaving into their day.
Yep. First thing that comes to my mind, create a media detox.
Totally.
And I hesitate to use the word detox because that can be tied with negativity, but I say detox in a way where you are choosing to allow certain energies into your space and let go of other things that don't serve you. So watching what you consume, who you follow, what you read, limiting your exposure, creating boundaries. We did a great episode a while back on boundaries, and I know that resonated with a lot of people.
Yep.
But seeking out media, but also communities, and it's interesting that we've talked about COVID, and now as we come out post-COVID, seeking those communities that celebrate diversity, celebrate wellness positivity, not just physically, but mentally, spiritually, emotionally, because they are absolutely out there.
100%. Yeah. I think to add, I'm going to talk about gratitude because I always talk about gratitude, but practice gratitude, self-love. So love your body. Thank your body for being able to walk out the front door, to be able to hop in the shower, to be able to pick up your kid, to be able to drive a car, whatever that looks like, but be grateful. Have those moments of it's really easy for me sometimes where I'm like, I get out of bed and I have a sore back and my hips hurt and I'm like, oh. And then it's like, well, you get to get out of bed. So go, right? Go. So, and self-love too, I think for women is no one likes to do this, but stand in front of the mirror and actually love that naked body in front of you. Women have a very hard time looking in the mirror without judging. It is it's almost hardwired for us to look and pick apart before we would even maybe get to, but my hair looks good, right? There'll be 20 negative things we'll say before we get there. Yep. So start adding more of those positive, walk by the mirror and be like, oh, my hair looks great. Or walk by the mirror and be like, oh, you know what? I feel like I'm radiating today. Whatever that looks like. And I know it's cheesy, but it's helps. Not. It just, you program your mind.
The whole standing in front of the mirror naked is so hard. It's hard, but being able to pick 3 things that you love about yourself. And I'll just throw this out there. The amount of messages that I receive from women in their 40s and older, not saying people in their 20s and 30s don't struggle. I'm just talking about kind of where we are right now. Who have a hard time being intimate with their partner because they don't like being naked during sex. And either the lights have to be off or whatever, because they're having a hard time celebrating where they are right now. The stomach, just things are just different, right?
Yeah.
I have women all the time, they're like my boobs are saying, I'm like, well, gravity not on our side when we get older.
It's not.
It's not,
it's
right?
Not.
But doing an activity like that, as uncomfortable as it is, and I think we need to remember that it's the uncomfortable activities and exercises that grow your mind. Mentally and emotionally. It's those really uncomfortable things like standing in front of the mirror that
100%.
help you be able to embrace who you are right now. I think being able to, we talk a little bit about instilling mindful daily practices, gratitude, and I love that you bring up gratitude because we hear it all the time, but I don't think people always understand the impact that it has when you are truly committed to making that a part of your day. That helps cultivate awareness on what is important to you, doing it consistently every day. But mindful daily practices, like we brush our teeth every day, we take our vitamin. Well, no, I shouldn't say I take my I try to take my vitamins every day. Rob will laugh at me because he'll be, did you take your vitamins? Yes. Creating habits like reciting positive quotes to yourself. I'm a big believer in sticky note affirmations, at our computer, in our car. Again, it sounds cheesy, but often those are the things. It's the simple things. They don't have to be hard. Identifying what our bodies can do versus what it can't do or how it should look.
And those I am statements are very powerful, written down, say them out loud. Just incorporate more body language, positive body language into your day-to-day.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be big.
And I think that can then transform into what our kids see as well.
It's huge.
Because to what you said earlier, they don't always, they watch what we do. They don't listen to what we say. They watch what we do. So when I work with my daughter now in terms of using her journal, being able to celebrate the positive things that she's doing now instead of the long road that she still has ahead of her. That's huge, right? And helping her understand that it's those small, daily, simple things every day that cultivate over time.
Yeah. I'm looking at time. So in closing, I'd love to know if you could talk to your younger self. I know. What's the one thing you would want to share with yourself if you could around self-love, body positivity?
First thing that came to my mind, actually, it has nothing to do with self-love or body positivity, is to not be so mean to my mom. Mom, I love you. All the times that I was so bitchy and so snippy. And when my girls are like that now, I'm like, oh, fuck. I know what she went through. Love you, Mom. Because I know she watches. Okay, but going back to self-love, really, so I think huge, and it's, I say this all the time, but it's setting boundaries. I can't stress this enough. You can't buy someone's love, affection, friendship by doing the things that you think are going to make them happy. Learn to be okay with being alone. And that sounds very morbid, but you need to celebrate who you are first as a person and love yourself first before you can then allow that to then develop it. And Rob and I talked about this a lot when I came out of my divorce. He had gone through his stuff. And this was about, I need to work on me. I need to work on building myself up. I need to learn to love myself again. I need to be okay with, it's okay to be alone. It's okay to be not included in everything. It's okay to not be invited to everything. Learn to be okay with that. And stay true to yourself. And most importantly, look at who is in your circle. Your circle should want to see you win. Your circle should want to see you clap. Your circle should clap for you when you are celebrating things. And if they're not, then it's time to get a new circle and really create that ability to force self-care on yourself versus burnout.
I love that. I think for me, it would be, I thought about this one, but I think it's just really that your worth is not tied to your physical appearance, that your worth is deep and your self-worth is so much more than this. And it goes back to the supposed life, all the shoulds, I coulds, the musts. I think of how much effort I put in trying to fit in. And it's part of being young and a teenager and finding your groove. But it has to, and has to is a strong word, I would have encouraged my younger self, I can hear Sherry in my head. I would encourage my younger self to be kinder, self-love, and know that who I am as a kid was enough, period. And I think if we can help our kids in any way, shape, or form, is for them to know that who they are as a person is enough, period.
I love that. What a great way to end.
Awesome. Okay. Well, on that, thank you so much for joining us today. I loved our first episode in our new series, Real Women, Real Talk. We'll have lots more coming your way, so don't miss those. You can access all of today's show notes by visiting our website, as always, at livingrichley.me. You can also sign up for our new Facebook group where you can get access to all kinds of exclusive content. Yeah. And thank you to all of you who have already joined. We're loving the conversations. We're loving the posts. So if you haven't joined, you're missing out. So make sure you do. So thanks again. And until next time, get out there and continue living your best life.